Welcome to the best podcast you'll ever watch in your whole entire life. Any podcast ever. Not about PPC, not about advertising, ever. And I can say that confidently because not only am I here, Cory Lindholm is here. So welcome to the PPC Unfiltered podcast. Cory, how you going, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. How you doing, man?
I'm good. And anyone who's seeing this for the first time because our podcast is blowing up, this podcast is called PPC Unfiltered. It's about pay-per-click advertising from an unfiltered approach from two legends of the game,
Actually,
Cory Lindholm and Michael Nadalin. Now,
yeah, Michael,
beyond all their
we really
fake
do this
humility,
shit. We're not just gurus. We are not just fake gurus. We do this shit every day.
We're not even gurus. We've ascended above that. We're just gods. So, now look, this podcast is here for us to have a chinwag and chat about advertising, what we're seeing at the moment. We both manage a lot of accounts and big spending accounts, and we've been doing it for a long time. So it's us just having a chat about our experiences, what we're seeing at the moment, and just sharing it because unfortunately, what we've both noticed is most information out there is created by people who are not actually managing accounts, but just selling information about how to do advertising, which is good as a beginner. But when you get to an advanced stage, if you're working in an agency or running accounts yourself for your own business, just don't cut it. So this is us just having another discussion about other parts of advertising, especially around Google Ads, that really do move the needle. And we know that because we've got the direct experience and track record of delivering it. So putting that aside, let's have a chat. Cory, how's life, mate? You good? Give me the goss.
Things are good. I'm traveling. I just jumped through a couple of countries to get back to the States. So I'm happy to be back, though I know things are crazy for people here. It's been nice to be away for about 4 months. We won't get into that, but things are crazy, and they always are crazy. Let's not be stuck in the recent past. Things are always crazy. There's always something in the news to talk about. But Michael, things are good. Business is good. Things are growing. Systems are being made. Things are being fixed. Things are good, man. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. As I've been saying, I've been redoing the whole MarketLead process of onboarding to live. So reviewing our whole process from the first call until we go live with the client, because we've noticed that whilst we're amazing at running accounts, optimizing, chatting to clients, all that strategy, there's a lot of inefficiencies on that front end, purely just from like people and clients just taking their own damn time. And I've recognized that if you don't tell anyone anything, they will make assumptions on how long it should take or how it should be done. And then assumptions turn to expectations, and then expectations turn to not so nice things. So realistically, just been focusing recently on all the processes again. We're getting exceptional results for our clients. Just need to make sure that it's way more streamlined on the front end so we can get those results faster on the front end as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's good.
I think that's a common problem. So I think this will be good for everybody. It's good for us to do some refreshers on that. And I think every agency needs to do that from time to time. Don't just assume and stay stuck in your templates. Get your head out of your ass and really think, are we innovating? Are we doing things as best we can?
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Is there anything we need to change? I like that.
Yeah. And well, let's start. So we're going to talk about onboarding and our own processes of onboarding. Cory, you work with and for yourself. So yours are more aligned with you. And then I've got my company. So I've got 2 companies and teams associated with it. So it's interesting that I've grown the company from being me to a team, and I know how to do everything. And that's the problem, because I know how to do everything. And then sometimes there's an IP gap with things that I unconsciously know in my brain, but the team doesn't. So there's so many ways you can go about this. And when I was earlier on running my business, I'm like, I don't need to create SOPs for this. Who am I creating SOPs for? It's for me. I know what I'm doing. Like, why am I wasting time when I could just spend 20 minutes just doing the work rather than 2 hours writing all the stuff up and doing looms? But now I've hit that critical point with the team where I'm like, look, we're doing everything properly, but it's taking time because we're going back and forth with the client. If I was speaking to the client, I would be like, I need A, B, C, D, and D. And the team member might only be asking A, B, and C. And then we miss out on D, and then we ask for D, and then it takes a week to get D, and then you've kicked out your live date by, a week at least. So how do we start this conversation, mate? How do we start? Where do
Well,
you reckon we
I
start? Because
think
we're just having a conversation here.
I love how it's your topic, but you're asking me how
No,
to
but
do
mate,
it. It's
mate,
fine. I'm kidding. I'm
it's a
kidding. I'm kidding.
conversation.
So I think I want to start with how this is complicated. Any good consultant's always going to say it depends, and this is very relevant here because every agency is going to have different size clients, different. When I say size, I mean account spend, sales velocity of the clients, etc. And some agencies are willing to take on more complicated data sets and objectives than others. So there is going to be a lot of variance here. We're not going to say at the end of this call you're going to have the 3-step template that's going to apply to every client because we would be terrible at what we did if we did that, right? So
Yeah.
that's not the goal. It's really to talk through what are some of the complications, what are ways that we like to overcome some of those complications, right? So offhand, Michael, because this is very top of mind for you, what are some of the complications that you guys usually run into when trying to template this onboarding process?
Yeah. Beautiful. Wonderful question. And this definitely comes from the high level or meta approach, not meta Facebook, but meta thinking, is you've just mentioned that it depends. So it can't be templated, but then at the same time, it kind of can, but it can only be templated based on your own business and your own systems. As in, you can't go, Cory, what's your list? Michael, what's your list? Okay, I'm going to put them together and that's our list. How
Right.
we've done this is we've just gone, I've sat down, thought about all the years of my experience, and I'm just noting down all the parts, the processes, and I've recorded looms. But then more importantly, telling the clients or internal team, like, where do we have the most pain points? And as soon as we've had a pain point on the onboarding or managing a client, I put that in there because I'm like, this isn't about creating a checklist from hypotheticals. It's creating a checklist from past and current experience going, this has been a gap in our last onboarding, in our second
Right.
last onboarding, in our third last onboarding. Where was the gap? Okay, here, here, and here. We've got to put that in the process because if you've had a gap with it once, the probability of it happening again is probably quite high because the nature of our industry and business is, whilst every business is unique, there are common themes. And as advertising gets more complex and more is required, you might have maybe 5 years ago needed like 5 things: Google Ads, Google Analytics access, and their budget, and like a few keywords, like really simple. Now you might need backend access, software access, GTM's access, like all these other access points that even years ago have advanced. So if you're relying too much on a checklist that someone else has given, firstly, it will be too bloated. So you'll be asking for stuff that fatigues the client and yourself to ask for that you don't need. And then secondly, you'll start like, when you get an incomplete brief from the client, you'll go, yeah, that's fine, rather than having the conviction to go, I need this, this, and this by this date, and they don't give it to you, and you go, no, we need that. Because I
Mhm.
think the best place is self-reflection and go, where are our current pain points? And then putting that into the checklist or your process. So when you say like, how do we go about it? It's really started from pain. Where have been the gaps? Where have things been taking? It should have taken a day that took a month. Where has it taken
What are
like,
the?
sorry, go on.
Oh, go ahead. No. Please continue.
That's it, mate. That's it.
I'll
You cut me
I'll
off at a
grill
perfect
you with
time,
follow ups.
mate. The AI bot in my brain just like ended its sequence, so it needs another it needs another prompt.
Processing. It's thinking.
Processing,
It's thinking.
slow lag.
So, what are the things that come up most often for you guys that are maybe like the top one, two, or three? What are the things that come up that do make it really complicated to template, and how do you guys usually overcome that?
In terms of templating, or the problems that clients that have that we need to template.
In relation to onboarding, what are the things you guys have seen over the years that come up over and over where you go, shit, this doesn't fall into a templatable, repeatable process? What are those maybe top things?
Man, I
I can
don't
give you
think
some
there is.
examples.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll say straight up, man. Like, we work with like a lot of clients, and my brain always looks for universals rather than specifics, because the specifics you just naturally deal with. I'm always going, where's the common pattern here that applies to all clients? That if we stamp it out once, it stamps it out for like all the clients. So I actually probably have a mental block of filter there because I don't tend to think that way. But I'll ask
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So I think the most obvious thing that comes up, and it's always like, it's another one of those. Like, I wish I could just template it, but I would say a headline would be like a varied tech stack. So when there's varying tech stacks, so different internal analytics,
Yep.
custom CRMs, different types of CRMs, back end e-commerce shopping platforms, fuck, it creates a real fork in the road where you go,
Yeah.
shit, I had everything ready for Shopify and
Yeah.
GA4, HubSpot, whatever, but you're going to get that sometimes where that is not their tech stack. And so, each system is obviously going to demand a kind of a custom approach to how you're going to integrate that into your pipelines, if that's something that you do in a more advanced level. Your reporting is going to have to be customized if you're trying hard to have a custom report and not just like a basic Looker Studio that
Yeah.
everybody can steal from everybody else. Like if you're really trying to make it more custom for them, and that's part of your service offerings, then a varied tech stack is going to really throw a wrench into this
Yeah.
what's happening. Also, attribution. Some companies are going to use third-party attribution tools. Some are going to be relying on Google's self-attributed data. So, that's very difficult to just plug and play at scale because a lot of clients are not going to fit into just GA4, Google Ads, and that's it. And there's going to be usually the bigger, more sophisticated, more complicated clients are going to have varying tech stacks that you might not have a template ready to go for, and that is going to create some complication in the
Yeah.
onboarding process, and that is probably the most common one that I would say.
Interesting. Well, look, I agree with you, and most clients and businesses don't require that. Now, they might for you because you are the god of analytics. Most clients that we work with, and once again, that's for e-commerce and usually higher tier, higher quality
And
e-commerce stores.
Legion.
Lead gen using attribution.
CRMs, Wicked reports for attribution, different analytics programs, data pipelines, data warehouses. Those are all pretty relevant.
Mate, I'm going to give you some do you want some cold water on the face? Most businesses are not that sophisticated. I've got clients spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Yeah, honestly, I would say most of them, when they use the data, it does go into a CRM. But as far as the analytics that they do or require or request, it's not there. So this is the challenge with us versus a normal person watching this. You and I are very, very focused on the analytics and the data analysis. Most advertisers aren't. So the stuff we're talking about, well, it's probably on like the real top end. So that's the challenge is for us, it always starts off with just getting the access to the ad accounts and then just like those types of things. And those are some of the problems is just like getting access to the accounts, getting the billing set up, getting a contract signed. Like it's really that simple.
It can take a while sometimes. Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's like when you need a contract signed, it's like taking like 4 weeks to get signed. It's like, guys, this could take one day. Or like getting access to an account, or like having an onboarding call, and like I'm busy. So, whilst, dude, like there's been so many times, and currently with clients with the onboarding, getting that data, we start without that. That's the thing. Like we can start without that data purely just because it's like that's an add-on to the service, not the core service itself. I know for you it might be the core service because, man, from direct experience, people take months for us to get that client, like that data, like months. Like literally we could be like, I will say from the start, okay, we'll do all this analytics work for you. I'll just need that pulled into a Google sheet or a data place like this. All you got to do is there. 6 months later, 8 months later, it's still not done because I'm relying on third party. Like I'm not the developer pulling that data through an API. Like I'm waiting for that. And I've realized if I'm waiting for that, I'll be waiting a long ass time because most businesses are, just dealing with their day-to-day are reactive and things like this are quite proactive. But for them, because it's so proactive, and they don't understand the depth of it, they don't prioritize it. And now I'm fine because I can just keep going on. Like that's just additional really hard work we need to do. But for the onboarding, this is just like, once again, looping back to the onboarding, at least for us, I plant that seed that we need that, but it's not essential to start because it's just, I know from past experience, it will take them months to do, even if they do it.
Well,
Although I know with you,
they don't have it, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, it assumes that they have it. They just don't have the capacity or capability to actually give it to me.
Oh, you mean just straight access, right?
Just straight and access, as in not me having access to their CRM. They'll give that to me. I don't want that. I want them to port it over to a Google Sheet so then
I see.
I can use that raw data. Now, I know that sounds so simple, but dude, I've got a client at the moment who did $3 million with us last year in the renovation space. And I'm going, guys, can I please just get like an export of all your sales last year in one column, the email address, and one column, the sales volume?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's a simple export. I still haven't got it after like 8 months of asking.
Yeah.
Like it's, and then I've got other clients that they've got a database CRM of like 80,000 leads over the last year and a bit that we've been working with. And it just took them like 8 months again just to like get it. Now, this sheet is ridiculous. It takes like 3 minutes to load the data in a Google Sheet, man. It is cooked. There is so much data in there. But even still, it's waiting. I know now, waiting for offline data to start working, I'll be sitting waiting and not being paid for a long ass time.
Sure.
And it's just pattern recognition. But you, mate, you might be able to twist arms and stuff. So let's loop back to you and your experience with that. Do you enforce that you need that data from the start, or do you start without it and then start to go, look, guys, I need this from you?
Yeah, so I want to be clear. I don't see this as a lens of it's either simple or it's complicated. I think in reality it is about what your agency is willing and able to offer, right? As
Yeah.
a service package. Some agencies just don't have the internal capacity or resources or the just desire, right, to offer data pipelines and building those things out so that
Yeah.
we can do the best job possible, or we can have all the transparency on the data. If you're going to find an agency like that, it's pretty rare. I mean, again, that's one of the reasons clients pay me a premium, is because I don't have to wait for some other agency to do that for me. Like, I pride myself on the data science side. And part of that is building out my own and customizing my own proprietary models, so that they can benefit from that. But these are usually, again, going to be larger clients that are able and willing to pay a premium because they do need and want, they have a desire for those types of systems. They want to start getting more predictive with their marketing. They don't just want to be stuck in sort of static reporting. They want to be able to forecast some stuff and plan around that. And in order to do that, we need the data pipelines. And I don't personally want to wait for some other data scientist or some other developer to try to, slap a bunch of stuff together. That just is one of the reasons that I charge what I charge, because it is, if it's necessary, then that is going to be a big part of it. So it's not usually something where I'm having to twist other people's arms, because it's usually I already have my own proprietary systems.
Twisting your own bra, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I just have to plug them into my stuff, which can be complicated sometimes. Hence the very tech stacks tending to create some issues. But it's not even always just the reporting for me, but it's also the reporting for the client, right? Sometimes clients have different and very unique reporting requirements. Now, this is, again, not everybody, but again, if they have complicated objectives, they have big teams. I mean, again, I tend to work with the larger e-commerce brands and lead generation brands. They do have, like, a CMO, or they have a marketing department that has their own stuff kind of roughly built, and they want to have something added to that or integrated into that. Again, I am not an employee of them, but I want to make sure it's a strategic partnership, and then I'm working within their universe of reality, and then also integrating my own domain expertise to make sure that we're all successful, right? So at the end of the day, there is going to be another one in here. It's not just very tech stacks, but it's also unique reporting requirements.
Yeah.
That can be sometimes an indication of a nightmare client, but not always. Sometimes they just have sophisticated processes and systems, and they have a lot of stakeholders that they personally, your point of contact, has to report to. And that person maybe above them needs certain things that they need to talk to investors for, or something like that. So that's another kind of bottleneck sometimes in the onboarding process to be aware of.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because that does loop back to screening the client and actually making sure you know what they need.
Yeah.
Because what they need, whilst it might seem like, oh, they want to do a Google Ads, it's good industry, what they need as an individual client from a onboarding perspective, tech
Hmm.
stack perspective, stakeholder perspective, and reporting perspective could actually change the scope of work, which will actually change the work you do and the onboarding as well. Because
Yeah.
if they need that from day one, that's part of the onboarding. Versus if in
Yeah.
6 months they ask for it, it's not really the onboarding, but it's kind of, it moves in that direction.
Hmm.
The thing I've been reflecting on recently is just the timeline of an onboarding. So we've both had times where you just like the client speaks to you and you're like, yep, let's start today. And you're like, fuck it, let's do it. And you just take over the account and you start running it. You get access to the account. They sign your agreement. They pay your invoice.
Hmm.
And then you've got times when it takes literally months. And it's not months because it's like, oh, I've got to speak to all these stakeholders and all these things. They've signed the contract. It's just that, they're like, yeah, sorry, I'm really busy. Can we have our onboarding call in 3 weeks' time? Things
Hmm.
like, oh, yeah, I'll get that to you. These like images and logos. I'll take, I'll get that to you tomorrow. A month and a half later, it's there. Yeah, we're really keen to go live. Then they get busy. So one of the things is around the timelines because time, you don't get that back and you're paying the price anyway. The other big challenge around time is if someone's hasn't paid you yet and they haven't started, there's a bit of this gray area where it's like, oh, why would I pay you and haven't started yet? But you're still following them up and asking for things. So you kind of already started the process. And if the process has started, but they haven't gone live, like they've paid you, and they might go, they may, this hasn't happened, but these are all the things that can come up is we haven't actually run ads. Why am I paying you? So because of their like delay and lag in giving you the things you require, you're kind of
Hmm.
already starting your consulting, but you haven't really started from their potentially from their perspective. So this is a big thing I'm working on now, and this is part of the onboarding is just going, hey, in the next 24 hours, I need your Google Ads account, you to sign the contract, you to pay the invoice, give us your Google Tag Manager, give us access to your backend, all of these things going, I need that in the next 24 hours. Can you
Hmm.
do that? And they'll be like, yes, I can do that. Everyone can do it. And I'm like, will you prioritize this? And in the moment, they'll say yes. You need that commitment because if you don't, I'll say from direct experience, we've just had a client a month and a half ago that took like a month just to give us access to their Google Ads account. And we're spending like, multiple times a week or like a few times during that time following up with them. We're talking about it internally. It's just this wasted time and
Yeah.
energy and RAM just to get basic stuff. So,
Hmm.
Cory, what's your process or thoughts about like timeline to just getting access to accounts and like going, look, we're starting, I need this by in the next X amount of days? Or do you say
Hmm.
that firmly or you just go, yeah, get it to me?
Yeah, I practice what I preach on that, which is you have to have a very ironclad contract that makes it very clear about the timelines and the onboarding process.
Yep.
So, whereby if the client cannot get you that information, that's going to cost them money because at the end of
Yep.
the day, I'm not going to be paid less um, because we're waiting months and months and months and we're getting unsatisfactory results because we're waiting. It's very clear that we have these couple of weeks to restructure if necessary, do the research that's necessary, the analytics that's necessary, plug you into the systems, etc. within this period. Is the sooner you can get this to us, the better we can analyze, right? The better
Yep.
results and the quicker we can start getting new tests up into the account. So not only emphasizing the fact that you're paying me because you want better performance in some
Mm.
form or fashion. The quicker you can get that to me, the quicker I can start doing a better job of getting us to that point of success that you are hiring me for, what you're paying me
Mm.
for. But at the end of the day, in the contract, it's going to be very clear that this is what I would usually advise that, look, we have this amount of days, it was 10 to 14 days, whatever it is, to do the onboarding, to do the initial audit, whatever it is, do the deep dives that are necessary. You need to get me the data as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm going to be just doing what I can with the available access and data that I have.
Yep.
And that's probably going to be substandard, and you're not going to want that. You're paying me too
Yeah.
much to have me work with substandard data. So I feel like it sort of naturally incentivizes them, because money does usually move the needle in this
It does.
business. So that's how I usually look at it. Yep.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's an interesting approach because every business is different, being clients, and every agency is different with their onboarding processes, what's required and what's needed. And that's why once again, I said we self-reflect and go, where are the pain points, and using that as a starting point rather than going,
Mhm.
what's the best idealistic way to do it? It's like, where do we constantly come up against a wall? Because a lot of clients are doing this for the first time, or like, I've only done it once or twice. They don't know what the rules are or what we even expect. So unless we tell them, they won't know. They won't know. So it first comes with like clear communication of going, we need these things from you by this date. And we're going to start the billing on this date, or we've already started the billing. By
Right.
doing this, we get to actually get you results faster and do the work
Uh,
faster. So like we're not in idle mode.
yeah,
I think it starts with
exactly.
communication first. Sorry, go on.
Yes. No, I was just going to say, I think really important there is we have to, as service providers, you have to, if you're expected or you're offering to do more, in other words, you don't want to wait for them to create systems or plug things in or create integrations, then you need to, if you're willing to offer that, you need to charge extra,
Yeah.
because, and that needs to be in the scope, clear in the scope of work, what you do, what you don't do. That needs to be ironclad and really, really clear from the outset. Even before they sign, you need to be getting on the same page in terms of scope and expectations for performance, et cetera, and timelines. But I also think a big part of that is you're making clear that this is what I'm charging for. If you are also needing me to do and create ETL pipelines and sophisticated data integrations or data cleanup and transformation, whatever, that's a high ticket thing you're asking. Therefore, as an
Yeah.
agency, you just need to charge more for that, because it is
Yeah.
additional services that rarely a marketing agency is going to offer unless they have an
Yeah.
in-house person, and even then they're in a really upcharge for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because I think that's one of my gaps is I spend a lot of time doing custom reporting for clients, like dynamic
Mhm.
custom reporting. And it gets to the point where I can guarantee you they won't get it anywhere else. Like they actually won't, maybe with you. But even we do it differently from how you would do it. And it kind of ends up being like that's the main service because the advertising's going so well. But just because the advertising's going so well doesn't mean that this additional service that's bringing the transparency of the data is just included. So I think that's a really important thing is on board, like from scoping and like seeing if the client's the right fit from onboarding, it's constantly reminding them of the expectations, setting the expectations of how we work together, and then most importantly, managing those expectations so that as time goes on, I'm like, oh, Cory, can you just quickly do this for us? And you're like, for sure, we'll put a scope of work together for that. And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, why are we doing that? Well, it's not included in this current scope, as we've mentioned in the past, because
Yep.
sometimes it's so easy to just go, oh, it's this one time. I'll just help them
Yep.
out. And that's what happens. It's usually a scope creep that kills agencies. I reckon about 60 to 70% of the work we do is just out of scope work, purely just because
Mhm.
like we're helpful. But that's
Yep.
harming my company. That's why I'm doing this onboarding stuff. That's where the pain came from. I'm like, where has been the gap that we've ended up to this place where we're doing all this additional work, which is so valuable and moving the needle, but we're not being paid for it, as in
Well, and
this. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, if people are the personality types to be more people pleasers, I think this can be really challenging for them, right? It's a
Mm,
unique challenge where they say, "Man, should I ask for more money? I feel like they're already paying me so much," and blah blah blah. But look, simplify it, and this is not about greed here. This is maybe for Michael.
That's Scrooge McDuck here.
I figured you'd jump in and say it before I got it. But like, think of it just like a general contract. If you want someone to build a house for you, they are going to very clearly define what you want, because the last thing they want is to build a house that you don't want to live in, right? So
Yeah.
the first thing they're going to do is scope out that project. What exactly are the room sizes? How big does the back patio need to be? Are you sure you want that style of a roof? Whatever. That's what we do. We do the same thing. We need to be very clear about the scope. And you know what? Again, it's not greed. Sometimes you get started with the project and the homeowner, the prospective homeowner, they change their mind. They see, you know what? That isn't really what I wanted. That's okay. That's fair. That's as service providers, we go into it anticipating sometimes what you thought you wanted isn't really what you want. Maybe that's a KPI. Maybe that's the style of reporting. Maybe you start adding tools, right, to your tech stack, and now we want to get that integrated. That's a totally fair request. However, that is in addition to the scope you've already agreed to. Here's the problem. Most agencies don't clearly define the scope of work. The agent or the client rather sees you as just an agency that will do whatever and whatever possible at the agreed upon price to make sure that our marketing is as great as possible. But as a client, as a business, you need to respect the fact that they are a service provider, probably providing this for multiple businesses, and their time is the most valuable thing, just like every other human on this planet ever. You can't just expect them to constantly add more without charging more. They're doing more work. You're adding complexity to the process. Thereby, don't be surprised if that service provider comes back, this general contractor, and says, "Look, sure, we can change the roof or we can make it a bigger house, but I am going to have to now pay more in resource costs and man hours. That's going to cost more. I'm not going to eat the cost because you couldn't make up or you weren't sure about what you needed to begin with." That's fair. That's not greed. It's just fair.
Yeah, well, it's just adjusting the scope because when the requirements have changed, the scope should change. It's like it's cause and effect. Now, as you're saying this, Cory, I can say these wise words, but man, you're hitting me in the feels right now because I think the challenge is when you're a helpful person and you make a lot of money, you're like, oh, I'm just helping out a bit more. But it's like that is a disservice to everyone. It's a disservice to you because then you're taking on more work and you can't serve as many clients because then your time's bloated doing stuff. And I've got a lot of clients who I've gone, look, yeah, man, like that's going to cost you more. And then they don't go ahead with it. And I'm like, fuck, if it was so important, you'd pay for it. But if you don't want it, if you don't want to pay for it, I get it. Because that's the thing. Sometimes businesses are strapped for cash and you're like, fuck, this would really help them out. But at the end of the day, they ain't paying. This isn't charity. This isn't Cory's Make-A-Wish Foundation. This is cold, hard capitalism. Ruthless.
Capitalism. I mean, look, in an ideal world, everything would be free and we would not have to have any worries of health concerns or whatever. But look, we can't live in the ideal. It is what it is. You're asking someone to use their most valuable resource to help you out. And if you're not willing to pay for that, well, then you got to do it yourself and or pay someone else modestly. And I wouldn't expect very high value from that person, let's just say. So, those are kind of your options. So, Mike, I want to go on to the next piece here with onboarding. It's more particular for some accounts or some clients, maybe not everybody here, but if you are an agency that's providing any kind of advanced data analytics, you're building models, so your advanced modeling, those are typically not going to be plug and play. It's very rare you're going to have that. So every client's vertical, their demographic, their audience, their core audience, whatever, and their historical performance data is all going to be different unless you're working with a very niche industry and that's the only industry or whatever vertical that you work with. Cool. But most agencies want to scale out of that. And they're going to run into issues here where you have a new client that you're onboarding, you have these advanced models, you have a general process around integrating data into those predictive models or whatever kind of models you're doing. In that case, you do have to tweak settings and test the model out. That's also going to throw kind of a wrench in the process here where you have to anticipate based on the data complexity when you get access to the data and say, look, this is actually way more complicated than we thought. I had this before, like many times, where they have this custom CRM on the surface, the reports and the data cleanliness looks okay. But once you start doing the EDA, the exploratory data analysis, you realize there's misentered data. This is very typical of data science and data analytics. Things are a mess sometimes, especially when we're talking internal reports.
Let's just say maybe not all the time, but all the time minus 1%. It's high probability.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't just slap like a single, like, bam, advanced data model on every single account.
Yeah.
That's going to get really subpar results. And that's literally the opposite of the whole point of why you're trying to build these models. They're sophisticated
Yeah.
data models for a reason. If you're just
Yeah.
like templating that, you need to be able to have some customization within the models. Most of it can be very well templated, but you're still going to have to tweak settings and test things and adjust things over time. It's
Yeah.
an iterative process with these accounts. I just want to throw that in there for those
Yeah.
accounts, or if that makes any sense to you, cool. If not, don't worry about it. The
I
last
think
couple of
people
things
are
to wrap
looking
this up.
for.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you go.
Yep,
You
yep.
go.
Please. Oh, okay.
Is that? Go
the
delay. Okay, I'll
There's
quickly
a little
go.
delay here. Go ahead.
With people looking for plug and play models, the reason why people can do plug and play is because there's a general theme across probably enough businesses for a software provider to create a solution.
Mhm.
Most businesses are unique. Most businesses have very specific goals they need to achieve. And those specific goals will require specific technical requirements to get that outcome. Yes, they do need the things like budget management, like all these random things. I don't even know off the top of my head. Like, yes, there are universal things. But that North guiding star for all businesses that makes them unique will also require unique data to support that. That whilst other companies may have it, the general companies in the world won't have that. Just that's the nature of business. Like what my KPIs in my business would be is different from Cory, which is different from other agencies. And you just can't plug and play everything. You can't template everything. It needs to be customized. The same with your onboarding process, the same with the data that you use. It just cannot be like if I showed anyone the data we use in our company, they'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Can you do that for me? And I'd be like, no. But secondly, the reason why I've been able to do that is because I knew that there was a gap. Sometimes people don't know what the gaps in their business, and they actually don't have the data or capabilities to do it either. So just a little add in there because you're right. Like you can't just plug and play stuff, and it needs customization because it's a custom solution for a custom outcome.
Yes, exactly. That you were just beating me to what I was going to say. I was literally just going to say contextual nuance, right? Every business has contextual nuance. There's going to be I know listeners that listen to this saying the same thing, but this is why it's so important. Seasonal changes and fluctuations. You've got business cycles that affect some businesses, not so much for others. Some we talked about this recently, compliance concerns, right? Some businesses have a lot of things if you want to take those clients on around compliance, and they need to be very particular about what's in the copy and what's in the imagery and whatever. And it's not just to follow Google or Facebook ad policies, but also just their internal branding guidelines. There's a lot of things that don't fit into a perfect template. And if you're hoping to template everything as an agency or as a marketing service provider, I think you run into this scenario where you keep feeling like, all right, I got everything template. We're good. Let's scale.
Yeah.
And then you hire some salesperson and they start throwing accounts at you, and you're actually not ready because you didn't think through all of these complexities.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this call can be sort of a gut check, kind of a reality check for agencies and marketing providers out there, that you have to find a way to template what you can, but expect there is going to be some nuance here, and there's going to have to be some flexibility in your process. And I know that's not what you want to hear. We all want the templates, the shortcuts, whatever. But in reality, business is it's a messy thing. There's going to be different contextual nuances that have to be pre-accounted for as best as possible, but you're not always going to be able to predict and build systems for everything. And I think if you are, then there's probably some value that's being stripped from the process and what you're actually getting paid to do. So anyway, that's my rant.
But and as we chatted about at the start, it's also iterate your processes live. So if you have a problem that comes up with one client, implementing your system, that's the flexibility. It's like you do the template, it's like it's a living organism that keeps going on. It's not like a set and forget and then it's like, that's it, we do it forever. It's dynamic based on the nature. And you might go after a while, look, we keep asking for this bit of information. We just don't do it anymore. Take it out. Hey, we actually keep noticing we got this thing, put it in. It's got to be dynamic and live in nature. And really do, like if you're taking on a lot of accounts, there will be a lot of points where you're like, geez, this problem keeps happening. Whenever you have a pain point, put it in there. The easiest way to go about this is, what are the pain points that I'm having on the onboarding, on client management, and put that into your process. If it's something with the client management and you know it's more on the client than you, put it into the setting expectations at the start part. If it's part of the onboarding and you keep noticing or you're having it recently, put it in there and just make it part of the norm. And then after a while, you review it and go, hey, is this happening anymore? No, we pull it out. But these things are preventative, and it needs to be live and dynamic. Once again, it's not you just download someone else's checklist who is not running accounts. Maybe it was from 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And it's just like, do you know their cost per lead target? Do you know their budget? Do you know their locations? Man, like you could ask that in a few questions, you'd remember it up here. It's all those really nuanced things around things like access or data availability or KPI, like real KPIs and reporting on those KPIs and stakeholders. You can't just like template that stuff. It is really, well, you can template it, but it requires custom templating. Because
I like
at the end of the day,
better.
because there's their business, which is like unique, and then there's your business, which is unique. You're just not another agency. It's like I'll take another agency's one and then just in generic client it laps over. You got two custom companies coming together. You're trying to find that middle ground where you can just start the onboarding process, really just streamlined, which you can. It's if you take the time and willingness to self-reflect, identify the pain points, identify what you need, and then holding the standard and setting that expectation that you'll get that at a certain quality at a certain time from them.
Yes.
Michael out.
There you go. I just want to wrap up my side and say that I know for some agencies, it's going to be about being decisive on this. Do you want to work with clients who have a lot of variation in their data sources and their data complexity and their objective complexity in dynamics in the marketplace? Do you want the complexity? Because if you try to create if you want your agency to be super hyper systematized and templated, and you don't want to open up the door for a lot of customization, I would think ethically you have to charge less, but that's not for me to say, but you probably have to charge less, or you just have to be very, very particular about the clients that you decide to sign on, or you end up costing them because they're hoping to get all this stuff and they're not going to get it because it's very templated. Now, you might be able to get results that way, but I just think you have to be very decisive there as an agency. If you don't want this constant stress of redoing templates and redoing structures, and you keep feeling like, oh, things are good, we templated that, our PM is our project management system is totally aligned now with what we usually do. Then all of a sudden a new client comes on and it all goes to shit because you were overly optimistic about being able to systematize every single business. And as we've made very clear, that isn't usually possible with most businesses. Just systematize and template what you can. What is standard? Like Michael said, what comes up for you the most as a challenge? Try to create automations and systems and rules for that stuff, but open the door and keep the door open for customization. That's part of what they're paying you for, is the expertise and to be flexible and to be able to work with their current objectives and desires. And you're going to have to be strategic and be creative. Again, I think that's part of being a marketing partner, is to be creative, right? It's not just like knowing what settings to push. It's being able to take their unique situation and get the best possible success. That's it. That's Michael. The Michael out, Cory out. I think we're good.
Nice. Sweet. Mate, so we've got 10 minutes now. Do we wrap up or do we go for a last segment? We've got to be fast though. It'll be real fast.
I think we can. This is a quick subject. I think it'll be fast.
Okay, let's do it.
We can use this little marker here. If this is a new feature, add marker. Well, I think that'll help our editor, right? And then
there we go.
Have to
Beautiful.
Use that little thing. Okay.
Beautiful.
Cool. So I want to really talk about something that I don't think comes up enough. And I am mostly involved in working with larger e-commerce accounts. So you might be saying to yourself, Cory, you're the e-com guy. What the hell are you talking to me about lead gen? Well, guess what, guys? I still do consulting and management for large lead generation based accounts. So yes, I still think about these things and I still work with people that do these things. So anyway, the thing that I think is not utilized enough, especially in internal reporting for trying to understand where things are going, isn't being used in advanced modeling for predictions and simulations, is, drum roll please, All right. I think this is a custom metric that you guys all need to start utilizing if you're in lead gen, and this is lead velocity rate, or LVR. Think of this as a speedometer, right? So we all drive something, bicycles, cars, whatever. If your bicycle has a speedometer, this will be relevant for you. This is essentially a gauge to say what is, how quickly are new leads pouring in over time. Let's say it's like that. Why is that better than just saying, hey, last month we got 5, this month we got 10? Well, things are up, right? Well, it's because it creates not unnecessary complexity, but necessary complexity. Because if you just look at static values, things can get very hidden in that, especially when you start doing something that Michael and I preach all the time, which is to benchmark your performance data. What is normal for this account, for this business? Using LVR, again, this is your lead velocity rate. This is going to help you assess essentially and understand the speed at which your pipeline is growing. Now, especially for larger lead generation businesses, this is a crucial metric because we don't want to just see the size of the pipeline. That can be very deceiving. We want to see the velocity and how that's changing over time, especially how and as that relates to the changes that we're making or events that happen in the business. This could be you upped all the budgets. You went from $10,000 a month to $20,000 a month in spend. You started advertising on Facebook for outbound brand awareness, whatever it is. If you can measure this with lead velocity rate, you can get a lot more clarity and transparency as to whether that pipeline is growing, if it's moving in the direction you want. It gives you ideas around directionality. So instead of you just going on a whole tangent about this, Michael, any initial thoughts? What do you think about this metric?
Mate, I think it just really depends on the industry. I've got a property development lead generation industry, our main company, and in that industry, it's more important than anything else because you're trying to sell a high ticket, like a very high ticket, things that cost multi-millions of dollars. The sales pipeline velocity, not only from the lead perspective, but also the sales perspective as well, is when businesses are holding costs, large costs as well, you want to have the ability to get leads faster and sell those leads faster because then you can recoup your costs and then close projects off earlier. Because sometimes with businesses, if they do have a deadline, if you're holding that project for another 1, 3, 5 months, it could be costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars more in just holding costs and ongoing costs rather than closing that gap. So that's in terms of my experience with the property market and direct experience doing sales and lead velocity pipelines. But even just for a business ongoing now, it's like if like an evergreen business constantly going, it's like you want to know these things so you can actually forecast team and resources appropriately because we've got so many clients that they start with us, we get them hundreds of leads. They can't keep up with the leads. Then they only call the leads once, they're going on to the leads, and then they're moving on to the fresher leads. So then because of the velocity of the leads as well, they're not nurturing those initial leads as much, which there's always gold being left because you're like, oh, I called and left a message. They didn't call back. It's like, dude, everyone's busy and successful people are not going to call you back. That's on you. So even that velocity as well really needs to shift the business structure and resources from their sales pipeline or sales teams processes. Anyway, that's me ranting a bit. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. 100%. This is exactly it. This is a big talking point with this is the capacity. This helps you assess capacity. And like, if, it looks like things, because this is a trend metric. If we want to simplify, it's a trend metric. You're trying to see lead acquisition over time as opposed to just like this one-time static value. That helps for projections. That says, it seems like we've been going up 20%. The LVR keeps going up 20% over the last 3 quarters. Do we have the capacity in the next 6 months if it keeps going in that direction? Yeah. Hugely valuable, especially for small teams that don't have a lot of employees or resources here. That is really, really consequential. So it's a great point. Definitely need to be tracking that. It does help with understanding capacities to actually fulfill whatever you're offering. So
this is the thing. It's like, and it's really taking a step back rather than being like, because with our clients at MarketLead and Stratosphere, I know when we run ads, we get a lot of high quality leads. Now, because I know that, I take it for granted because I'm like, they would know that they're going to get lots of leads as well. No, they don't. Most times people are coming because they're getting no leads or few leads, either doing it themselves, not doing anything, doing it themselves, or doing it with an agency. When they come to us, we flood them with high quality leads. And it goes from like, and this isn't humble brag, it actually creates another problem with the clients, because then they go, guys, we can't manage this many leads. Can you pull the ad spend back? So it actually costs us money because we do a percentage of ad spend. So then when we're pulling the budget back, we actually pull back our management fees as well. So you've got to really recognize that if you are really good at what you do, you need to flag with clients like, hey, are you actually prepared for a high volume of leads? They might be like, yeah, like they go from, like you said, 10 leads to 20 leads. I'm like, no, we're going from like 10 leads to maybe like 300 leads a month. They're like, what? We're our cost, but like we've got a client at the moment who, before they worked with us, they're selling something from $50,000 to $200,000. They were only getting about 18 leads per month. Spam leads, most of them as well, from Google Ads. Month one and continued on. Well, month one, we hit 350 leads. Every month since, it's been 250 leads. That's a very different experience for their team. They've had to hire team members and sales members. Like, they're not, I wasn't expecting that. But as time goes on with the lead page or the landing pages that we do and the advertising we do, that's more normal now. And I recognize with the velocity part, it's like, you've got to tell people, hey, like, do you actually have the capacity to even just call the leads in an appropriate timeline, but then follow them up with an appropriate amount of follow-ups, being it a few calls on the first day, a few calls in the next few days, an email follow-up, all these other things as well. So it's
Go ahead. I was just going to say, that leads me into some of the. We only got a couple minutes, so we'll wrap this up. But that also leads me to some of the common pitfalls here. So I don't want. Get excited about this metric because it can be very insightful for your business and for what you're doing inside of an account. But also understand there's some common pitfalls. One is going to be what Michael's alluding to around quality. Velocity could look great, but if that's all junk spam stuff, that's not actually a good sign. So make sure that you are assessing that in the context of quality. Are you growing the client's bank account? If not, you're not being successful. That is always important, right? So velocity could look great, but it can be deceptive, just like click-through rates, just like conversion rates, whatever. It's not always like great because conversion rate goes up if that's all extra crap and they're paying more for that. Or it's just like Michael was just saying with the sales team, if that's adding too much stuff for them to do and it's not actually leading to quality, they'll let you know about it for sure. Someone will complain that marketing is doing a terrible job. But regardless, it is something to consider. The other pitfall is really, really fast attribution. It's really easy if your conversion tracking is messed up to assume that the velocity is going up or down. Make sure you are segmenting if you have multiple conversion actions in your Google Ads account, Facebook, whatever. Make sure you are looking at that appropriately. You're not just like aggregating all your conversion tags together and saying the velocity is going up. You might be completely incorrect.
And use and also proper tracking. Like I was saying, use proper tracking. Use Google Sheets on a simple level. Export your data, get it like with live APIs, make sure you got your Google Tag Manager set up. Make sure that when you're getting leads through, they've got UTM tags on them, multi-step approaches. Like this is where, once again, it comes to the data attribution side, man. Like we know that. We always know we're leading to that. But the reality is this is how you win the game now. It's not just like, what's the next best Google Ads hack or Facebook hack? It's like that stuff's good for the front of the line, but if that's good for getting leads, but what's good for getting money is the data side.
Yep, exactly. All right. Nice. So that's pretty much it. I think the only thing I mentioned is just don't be short-sighted with this. It is a trend-based metric, diagnostic metric. Don't be short-sighted just because LVR went up 1 month. Look at things in the context of a larger window. Again, this is a directional metric. Are things going up? Are they going down? Don't be overly worried just because LVR went down a little bit, 10, 20% in a month. Figure out what the normal range of LVR variance is. Is plus 20% really bad? Is that really crazy? Or is it more like usually as long as we're plus minus 40% on a month over month basis or quarter over quarter basis, we don't have to worry. Always make sure that you're not being short-sighted in your analysis there. And that's it. Michael, we did that as fast as we could. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Any last minute thoughts, comments, concerns?
Mate, this is my last thought. Cory at Ads by Cory, Cory Lindholm on LinkedIn, and just Cory Lindholm. Michael Nadalin, Michael Nadalin on LinkedIn, MarketLead.com.au, MarketLead on YouTube, and the PPC Unfiltered podcast for both of us.
Yes, and keep smashing that subscribe button. Keep liking everything.
Yes.
We really appreciate the growth in the channel. Keep tuning in. We'll keep bringing value to you guys. Thanks for watching and listening.